revocable living trust, which comes into being when you sign it during your lifetime. Now, a revocable living trust is a legal entity which is intended to hold all your assets, manage your assets, and distribute those assets when you have passed. Because you're creating a revocable living trust, you are the grantor, also known as the trustor. That's the person who creates the trust by signing the legal documents and by making sure that these assets, their home, their accounts, investment accounts, any assets that can go into the trust will be in that trust. That's funding of the trust. The trustee of a trust is the person who manages the assets once a trust is created. The beneficiary of the trust is the person who gets all the benefits from the assets that are in the trust. So, for example, they live in the house, they're a beneficiary, they get money, they're a beneficiary. And all of this is according to the terms of this trust. So in a revocable living trust, it is very, very common for all of those roles, grantor, trustor, trustee, beneficiary, all to be the same person. That's typically how revocable living trusts will be set up. And it's a little bit confusing because it's supposed to be this own entity, but it doesn't really feel like that because it's just you and your money and you're managing it for your own benefit. You don't even need to file a tax return because this trust doesn't have a tax EIN number because it's not separated from you. It is you, but yet it is a revocable living trust. So that gives people cause to be confused about it. As I mentioned earlier, the benefit of an RLT, of a revocable living trust is that it manages assets and distributes assets when you have passed away and without the need for a probate. So that is the big advantage of a revocable living trust. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about wills that wills can have trusts within them. Revocable living trusts are the same way. They can have trusts that are designed to be set up when the grantor dies. And especially with couples, they often will have the assets of the deceased spouse go into a new irrevocable trust for the benefit of the surviving spouse. That can be a tax protection trust. So there are next stages after one of the grantor of the trust, or if the trust is for a couple after they die, there are next steps to be taken to management of that trust. And because the grantor who was the trustee has died, there's going to be a successor trustee who takes over that management. If it's a couple situation, it might just be the surviving spouse. That's oftentimes when trouble occurs because the surviving spouse doesn't realize that they need to take action to set up a new trust, and they don't go back to the lawyer to get any guidance because, you know what? They don't realize that they have to. And oftentimes people don't like to go see the lawyer and ask for help because seeing a lawyer costs money. So they don't understand that they're supposed to take action. They don't take action. And as a result, there can be some consequences that were not as intended, including the fact that estate taxes may become due. So if you have a revocable living trust, and if somebody has passed away that was the grantor of that trust, if you're in a couple situation, definitely go see the attorney who helped you set up that trust. Let's talk about a misconception of revocable living trusts. One of them is what I just said. You don't have to do anything further when life changes. You do. Another thing is people don't understand that trusts require ongoing management. The trust has no effect on assets that are outside of the trust. So if you open up a new bank account and you don't title it in the name of the trust, it's not controlled by the trust. What does that mean? That means the trust has nothing to do with it. On your death, that asset will go to either a joint owner or maybe under the terms of your will. And you might say, why do I have a will if I have a trust? You will have what's called a pour over will. when you have a revocable living trust. Why? Because not uncommonly, people don't fully fund their trust. So when they die, there's assets outside of it that need to be captured and go through the probate process, through the will, and put back into the trust so they can be managed. So that is one problem with revocable living trusts, is people not understanding the work that's involved in keeping them up. Another misconception about revocable living trusts is that they protect assets. Remember I mentioned that a revocable living trust has no identity separate of the grantor, no tax ID number. It's just like the grantor owns and manages and benefits from it. They do. That means there's no creditor protections, at least not in the state of Washington, which is what I am speaking to. I would encourage you, if you're in a different state and you think that your revocable living trust gives you creditor protections, to talk to that attorney in the state that helped you prepare that trust. You know, and another thing about trusts like this is that they can be revoked. And that is why people are so attracted to them, because you can change your mind anytime and just get rid of your trust. So that is another reason that revocable living trusts are attractive. But again, keep in mind the key reason people use revocable living trust is to avoid probate.